Hey, what is happening? Painful Lessons Podcast. I'm Tyler Ramsey, and we own mistakes here. This is like our new phrase. We own mistakes. I think that it's the reason I started this podcast is because I love a good way where you can learn from someone else's mistakes. I also think the funniest thing is when someone has made some mistakes on the way to a victory and developed a perspective that gives them a real sense of humor about those mistakes. That to me is the funniest. And we have a guest today that I love. His name is Jeremy Cahen. Jeremy, welcome to Painful Lessons Podcast.
Thanks for having me on here.
You are like, I'm going to write like something about you when I like a description, and I'm going to call you a crypto king. Like, I feel like you're my friend, the crypto king. And you have become the crypto king after passing through all types of painful lessons and very humbling jobs. I think your most recent, you were a dog walker and a grocery store cashier.
Yeah, I know. I did a little bit of prostitution as well.
Dude, for very cheap, I'm sure.
I only had one client. Yeah, it was very cheap. I was probably one of the worst prostitutes ever, but
yeah.
I like to add that into the conversation
The
because
lazy...
I'm proud that I tried.
The lazy prostitute. Hey, if you want a lazy prostitute, go to this guy.
Yeah.
He won't shave. He will not shower, probably.
Yeah, but you know what? It's Painful Lessons Podcast, so I think that's fitting.
Is it better? Okay, so there's a discussion that we have.
It was a painful lesson.
It was a painful lesson.
Yeah.
There's a discussion that we have. But by the way, if you're going to be called the crypto king, it's because you have become rich. You've become rich. And before you were very poor. You seem to be the same guy, same attitude, the same type of dude. It doesn't seem like anything's gone to your head, although you did almost get kicked out of the floor seats that you have recently purchased at the Clippers game. Where you brought me as a guest, and I felt like I was going to watch you get kicked out for shouting at the ref.
Yeah, they just warned me. It was not that close to being thrown out, but they just said, someone from the security team was like, they're saying that you need to stop like talking to the referee or something like that.
That's probably the biggest flex. I feel it's going with you to that game and going to all the secret VIP areas and everything. I felt myself puffing up a bit.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think that's very like it's on topic for the conversation of like how our ego can get overinflated very rapidly, right?
Yeah.
And how like I appreciate and I take it as a compliment what you said, that I'm like still the same person as I was like when I was a dog walker and working at a grocery store, whatever it was, doing regular people jobs. I think it's very important to stay the same person. And if you let your ego get too overinflated because you think like, oh, I have like a fancy basketball ticket or something like that. Like I'm the type of person where like you could give me one fancy basketball ticket and I'll be like, I'm the shit now. Like, don't talk to me like that. Like let my ego get crazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like because I'm lucky and blessed that I've been so humbled, that has taught me like the importance of staying humble. Right. And I think like, anyone can let their ego get the best of them. And so like, it's just an important principle of mine. And I'm lucky that I got my ass kicked so hard already in life to stick to those principles, I guess, basically. And like, just try to stay humble. And it's hard because, we're both like kind of like big personalities and like can get a little bit like arrogant or whatever it is. Like we could just get big basically. Right.
Yeah. And
I think if we're too big for our own britches, God will humble us and take away all the cool stuff that we have in our lives like pretty fast. So that's another thing is like God is a big part of my life, and it wasn't before. And I didn't believe in God or embrace God until I was like brought to my knees and humbled by specifically like addiction and stuff like that. So yeah,
I don't know that we've discussed this. I didn't know that God had recently become a big part of your life.
Not recently, a long time ago. And it's like, I'm not a religious person and I don't even really talk about it a lot of times.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about like cool stuff that has happened in my life, like that's a huge part of my life. And I always try to just, it's part of like being humble, I guess. Like I always just try to say like, I'm really grateful to God and I think God is king and all this stuff. And I try to make a point of doing that every time I have an opportunity to, because it like helps me stay right sized, right? Which is like a cliche term or whatever, but like that's a good like mitigation strategy for someone like me to just like remember that God is the reason that I'm successful, not like me being cool or like special or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I continue to have success the more that I like lean into that. But also like one thing I'll say is like, I've had a lot of success, but I don't think that the way that that's manifested the most is like by me being rich. I think that I've had a lot of success because I have like a big platform in crypto and I've also helped a lot of people have success. Like that's the thing is like, I think that I could have a fuck ton more money than I do, a lot more money than I do right now, but that's not my priority. My priority is helping other people and being a good person. And I think that like the more I lean into that stuff, the more blessed I get.
So I want to discuss so many things that we have just touched. Spirituality. I think the one thing that comes up a bunch here with all guests is that if you are not actively seeking day to day to remain humble, if you are not seeking humility, then it will find you and you will not enjoy what happens if it finds you. So I wouldn't say also, I'm not talking to Jesus Christ. You have some of what's happened in this success is in you. The question is how much of it, like some attitude of puffing up. I don't think anyone can help it by puffing up a little bit. So it's like, is there something you do from day to day to check yourself?
You mean in terms of like to keep myself like quote unquote right size or humble?
Yeah, exactly.
I think I just try to like remember like the basic principles that have like served me well, right? And like I think
what are those?
Well, it's nothing fancy. It's like literally just like try to have a good attitude, try to be positive rather than be negative. One of the most important things that I've learned, and all of this stuff like is basically fundamentally rooted in like quote unquote recovery or like stuff that I learned in sobriety. And I'm not sober, but I was like in AA for a long time. And I think that I just picked up all these principles for living that like gave me a totally different set of tools to like live life with. And I just keep those things as part of my daily life. And so I think one of the most important things for me is believing in God, first of all. That's probably one of the most important things, if not number one.
Sure.
But also just having positive frameworks around stuff. Because I think that like, for me, I'm a very sensitive person. And that's why drugs and alcohol and like all that type of, dopamine appealed to me because it was a way of like controlling like oversensitivity to a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And so I think that mentally having a good framework for anything that happens in life is like, it's kind of like a natural version of like self-medication or something like that. Like you don't really need to self-medicate if you can just create a positive framework around things, right?
Yeah,
like
that's true.
A non-destructive framework, because a lot of times we have a lot of a role in like the events that are happening where like I could say my girlfriend dumped me and I could be like, this is a disaster, I need to go get drunk. Or I could be like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me and God is in charge and like I'm going to trust God and keep rolling with this. But it's like that's a framework. So I think we have a lot of say or sort of input on like how we decide to like perceive things. And I think that I consciously have to remind myself to like put a positive framework around things.
There is, what was your rock bottom? Well, you were kind of into the H, weren't you?
Yeah, I was a heroin addict.
Yeah.
So I feel like the rock bottom thing is interesting because it's just sort of like arbitrary. Like it could always get worse. I like the saying like every bottom has a trap door and you could go lower. You know what I mean? Like, so, but yeah, I was a heroin addict for a long time. And that was what like brought me to my knees and humbled me because I couldn't do anything without heroin.
We were on a trip together one time where we took this magnificent adventure where we rode with 8 other people. Army is the one that put it together. 8 of us on Vespas traveling across the country, and we could only camp, and it was winter. And I remember there was one time, which now I'm aware You had run out of heroin.
You're getting 2 trips mixed up.
I am?
Because I was sober on that Vespa trip the whole time. I was the only person who was sober on the Vespa trip. It was the bachelor party.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there was definitely a heroin trip for sure. Yeah. And I ran out of heroin fast. Yeah.
But all of a sudden, Jeremy has turned really cranky.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. That trip when we flew through the airport, and we were in the airport in Texas, and I had like a bunch of balloons of heroin in my mouth in the airport, and like all these drugs in my bag too. But I just was like, oh yeah, I was just like, I want to go to the bachelor party, but the only way that I can go is if I bring all this heroin with me. So, dude, it was crazy. Like we were at some airport in maybe the Dallas-Fort Worth airport.
Yeah.
And I was like pretty fucked up. And I was like, I need to go smoke a cigarette. And I like went to go smoke a cigarette. And then I realized I was outside the airport. So we had to go back through all the airport security all over again with all this heroin, and like had to put the heroin back in my mouth. And like, yeah, I had like every drug imaginable like on me. And I was just like traveling through the airport in Texas, like doing all this shit. Like, and dude, you know, I don't do that stuff anymore. It's been like 12 or 13 years since I've done heroin, but yeah, it was just, that was the way that my life was, where it was like, it was non-negotiable. Like you can't go somewhere unless you have heroin with you. Yeah. So, but the problem is I just ran out of heroin pretty fast. So I even brought like detox medications with me in case I ran out of heroin. And then I probably ran out of that too, you know, like.
I remember you were like sleeping all day. I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah, I was not feeling great.
So then it wasn't a deal on the Vespa trip.
Yeah, I was sober on the Vespa trip.
Totally sober?
Totally sober. That was when I was like already like a couple years into being sober at that point.
I wasn't drinking, but I was smoking weed and I wasn't drinking that.
I remember you were eating a lot of weed Kiva bars or whatever. Those like chocolate things. You guys were just like crushing those.
Yeah. Eating quantities of weed that would make anyone else flip out just to feel normal. You know, I know it's not healthy, but every now and then I'm just like, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have wasted so much time with that. I mean, I was just right now, if I smell weed, I don't think that I judge I don't think I'm real judge. I love people that party around me. I love all that. Love people that are really having a great time. But when I smell weed, it just makes me think of like dirty and like poor and like unproductive. And for a while it was just like, oh man, I think that I would think that's the smell of like your problems are going away for a bit. Like that's the smell of being able to sleep okay. And it's like such a waste. But you got to go through there to get where you are.
Yeah.
So you made a funny comment in the car, which was some people are passive aggressive and you are aggressive.
Yeah.
I don't think that we have ever had a real hardcore. No, I know that we've been on different sides of an argument at times, or different sides of like, let's say we're gonna go have breakfast or something, or where I remember when we were on the camping trip, there were a couple of times when you wanted to camp somewhere else, and I was like, I think I know how to change some people's mind. I can maybe manipulate them or create a leverage or something. I was like, if Jeremy's mind is made up, there's nothing in the world I can do to adjust it in any way. You don't really compromise when you have an opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it's something that I've been thinking about specifically in the context of like interpersonal relationships recently, because, you know, that's like the amazing thing about recovery is that it starts to give you this ability to like grow and like evolve as a person.
Yeah.
Which I think we're not doing very much when we're like pickling ourselves with alcohol and just like smoking all of our problems away and like just in this sort of haze of intoxication. Like we're not really like, we're getting older, but we're not growing, right? As people. And so I think that's what sobriety unlocked for me in a lot of ways, but it has to be a continuous and ongoing process. And like I said, I'm not even practicing physical sobriety anymore, but I still like all the tools that I got in recovery. And like, in terms of growing and evolving, like I am an insanely stubborn person, right? And I think that like a lot of things, I'm insanely stubborn. And like a lot of things that can serve us like incredibly well in one context, but it can be like totally alienating and destructive in another context. So in terms of like interpersonal relationships, it's just something that I'm thinking about. Like I'm still a stubborn motherfucker. Like that probably hasn't changed, but I'm like, oh, like maybe that should change, you know, like, because I think that I want to like have a family. I want to have other stuff in my life that I don't have yet. And especially if I'm like becoming successful and like having success in my life, like what's the point of doing that if you're not going to like share it with more people and share it with your friends and family and start your own family and do all this stuff. And I think that it's a requirement to make space for other people in your life. And sometimes that requires compromising or like being a little bit more open-minded to stuff. And yeah, it's hard because in some areas of life, like in work, being uncompromising and being stubborn has led me to be successful, right? But in other parts of life, interpersonally specifically, I think that I'm trying to think about strategies and ways that I can like be the opposite of stubborn and be like more accommodating and tolerant and stuff like that. But it doesn't come naturally to me at all. I'm a stubborn motherfucker. And like, yeah, it can be it's just good and bad. People love it and hate it. And I think the people that love me know I'm stubborn, but I think I can make it easier on relationships by mitigating that or balancing that a little bit, you know?
I have a question for you. We both were around, and I think you were going through your own stuff, and I went to rehab pretty much almost the same day as Army. We ended up going to rehab at the same time, but I remember being like feeling that he was doing things that were going to cause him a big problem. Like I remember specifically, I feel like he was making the choices that he was making. Like he seemed to be attracted to girls that I think were glaringly red flags. And he also at the time seemed like he was also real proud of the fact that he was like doing drugs and was posting stuff about that. And so like, I remember telling him, I was like, it is so clear that you are cruising for a bruising. Now we're both really close with him. And I think that this is a helpful conversation for anyone that has someone that they're close to that is clearly cruising for a bruising. Is there anything going back that you like, do you feel like you could have been louder or more helpful in shaking him?
I think that's an interesting question. And like, definitely we're both like some of his best friends. And also like we've become best friends too, like just from having known each other for such a long time. And I'm grateful for all those friendships. And I think that it's, you know, what I think we could relate on this, but you tell me, like, I think what I've learned through recovery, when you're in recovery, you like have a lot of other friends and sort of like road dogs or, you know, compatriots who are going through the same thing.
Sure.
You can't like stop somebody, right? People are going to have to go through whatever they're going to have to go through to ultimately learn if it works or not for themselves. And, you know, I don't know what happened with you, but with me and him at a certain point, I just was like, listen, dude, you're fucking up. Like, I was just like, you are fucking blowing it. And like, I probably
blowing it.
Yeah. I said, just blowing it. And I was like, what I specifically remember saying was like, you're being a fucking dumbass. Like, you're being stupid at this point. And he was like, you don't call me stupid, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, if you're not going to listen to me, you're not going to listen to anyone. Yeah. Because I've been friends with you since we were 11. I'm a former fuck up myself. And like, we're all, you know, we can relate. I'm not saying this from a place of judgment.
Sure.
But he just, you know, his ego was too big to hear it at that time. And like, that's something that I can relate to also. And I think that we get to a place in our lives sometimes where we stop listening to everybody, not just like people that we don't listen to anyways. We stop listening to like the closest people in our lives, our best friends, and basically our like extended family. And yeah, you know, it just was, I don't think that I could have done anything to change the outcome that he had to go through. But I do think that I'm happy that I did say something, right? Because I just think that at a certain point in time, like, you're not a good friend if you're not going to like,
no,
say
of course.
Something. You have to have like a point where you're just like, I'm going to communicate to the person that this is like too much, right? And I would also want the closest people in my life to do that too, right? Like I need it just as much as I want to give it out. And like, we're really lucky if we have people like that in our lives who are going to actually care enough about us to just vocalize something, right?
Sure.
It usually doesn't make a difference, but it actually, on the receiving end, I appreciate knowing that I have friends who will be like, dude, you got to do something, right? Not because it's going to change my mind, but just because it might help a little bit.
I think that it always helps a little bit, even if it just shakes them or makes someone get really angry. But I think for myself, I think I think that would have some guilt that would be very difficult to handle if I wouldn't have been louder. And because he's always also been really loud for me if I have been kind of visibly going in the wrong direction or really.
You're saying you wish you were more loud about it?
No. If I wouldn't have said anything, I mean, we got into real heated, kind of friendship almost stop. Let's say friendship pausing periods.
Yeah. Similar
over it. Yeah. And if it wasn't for that, then I think it was such a colossal crash that I would have been like, oh man, why the heck didn't I say something? So it is all I heard. I think it was Russell Brand. I heard say something which I think is so helpful, which is the idea is that you say to someone, I will help you change, but I will not help you stay the same. So like, this is what I'm offering. If you need any help to change, great, but I'm going to do nothing and contribute nothing to you staying the same. All the best.
Yeah, I like that quote. I guess like the way that I might think about it is, who knows what would have happened if you and I both didn't like confront him? Maybe he'd be dead. Who knows? Like, we can't say. Like, it took what it took for him to get his shit together. And look, I mean, I just think that this is true of anyone who's struggling with addiction. I don't think that any of these dynamics are like unique to a specific person. I think they're kind of like universal dynamics of addiction, right? Like, when you have that problem, like, you're going to go till the wheels fall off. And that's why we say, like, you had to get to a bottom. Like, you had to get to a point where you're just like, I give up, God. Like, I fucked up. And like, I tried it my way 100 times over. And it turns out my way sucks, you know, like, so
that's a conversation you have to have.
It's a painful lesson.
Yeah.
It's a painful lesson, but a valuable lesson.
You have to go, God, listen, turns out agreed. This is a terror. My way is the worst. Yeah. I get it. I need you. And in that moment, God was there for me. And that's why everyone's like, why do you believe it? No, I don't have people coming up to me asking this, but if anyone were to go, why do you believe in God? Why do you have this thing with God? What's the proof? I go, well, I needed help and he was there for me. And so that's all I need. Do you know the story, the funniest story of all of the stuff that Army went through? Tell me if you know this, because it involves Ashton. There was one girl that I think Army was only with one time, and then she decided that maybe that was something that she was going to really get some attention for. And so she found out that Army was spending time at Ashton, my brother's hotel in the desert. And so she drove out there on her own, went to the restaurant that is in kitchen in the desert that is in Ashton's hotel, Ramsey 29. And she tried to seduce Ashton so that he would let her into the swimming pool that was locked so that she could do a little photo shoot and say, I'm hanging out with Army, because he was there the night before. Do you know this story?
Sounds vaguely familiar, but there's a lot of stories like that. Like, that's gross, but it doesn't surprise me.
But it couldn't be funnier that it involves Ashton trying to being seduced, because he was like, oh man, I just all of a sudden started getting this girl came out and just give me a ton of attention out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden he put it together, what was happening. And he was like, I think he was happy to continue being seduced.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely some funny stories.
Oh yeah, actually, I should say that the sponsor that we have today is Ramsey 29. If you are in Joshua Tree area, specifically the town 29 Palms, which is so dope, stay at Ramsey 29. It's a killer place to stay. It's the coolest place in the whole desert. And they have this restaurant, kitchen in the desert, the dopest spot in the desert. It really is. I have to say, Ashton, I'm very proud of. He was going through a tremendous depression because he was working for so long casting reality television shows and just kind of knew that even though it was a good gig, that's what it was. It wasn't what he was supposed to be doing forever. And then he invested money in real estate in Detroit, and just that worked out so well. And then he just put everything in this hotel in the desert. And I really feel like he's coming to his own.
The hotel's doing really well.
It's doing killer. It's like
it looks amazing.
Crushing.
I mean, the last time we were there was a bit of a demon hell ride. I was extremely fucked up. I don't remember if you must have been sober at the time.
You're talking about Army's birthday.
Yeah.
That was right before everything fell apart.
Oh, so you were not sober at that trip?
I was sober.
Oh, you were? Yeah. I was on like every drug imaginable, basically, except for heroin. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jerry was there too.
Yeah.
The mystery plate.
Yeah, we were fucked up.
That was the most dangerous thing I've ever seen. There was a plate that was a mixture of drugs.
Yeah.
To be snorted. That's simply the craziest thing. So many people from that party have completely recovered their lives.
Yeah. It was funny, actually. I remember I ended up taking a ton of mushrooms and then having like the best mushroom trip, late at night. And then I just drove home on mushrooms. I drove all the way home from the desert back to LA on like a bunch of mushrooms, but it was amazing. But it was not a good idea, but.
Do you know who is seems to be, from what I gather, is an incredible role model now for people who are trying to clean up their lives? Is Cara Delevingne has become a champion of sobriety. She has a non-alcoholic Prosecco company. It's like she had an alcohol brand, and now she has a non-alcoholic like branch off from that. Like, I feel that it's amazing to have someone that's in such an industry to be a champion of sobriety like that.
I don't know much about her, but like I
just know what I read.
Yeah. Well, I got fucked up with her once, but I didn't even know who she was. And I kept saying her name wrong. And someone was like, oh, she's like a famous model or whatever. But I just remember that she was a really nice girl and like a really nice person and was really friendly and seemed really down to earth and did not seem like a stuck up like celebrity or anything like that. But I think,
she went through a public thing. So it's like there's no one's giving away the second A of an anonymity. It's a badass story when someone publicly falls and then is a badass of sobriety. I think it's so. There's so many great examples of. It's like one thing that I think is really great about social media, like one amongst a ton of negative things. One thing that's amazing is you see examples of people who have completely turned over completely won as a result of sobriety. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, I think that one thing that I like about like what I do when it comes to social media is that, first of all, I'm not like a celebrity, like a supermodel or like a A-list actor or something like that. But I have like a large following on the internet, and that's fun and that's like productive. But I like to feel like I have a lot more like control over like any sort of narrative that involves myself.
Yeah.
And that means that it's probably not as like lucrative or marketable, but it's more like my thing, right? Because I think that humans are like very messy and flawed and imperfect, and social media wants to like kind of force us into this like box in a way. Like, it's like we're on our good arc or like we're on our bad arc.
Yeah.
When it really, in reality, it's like we're always on both, right? And I just think that our attention span only has time for like a quick tidbit of information. So it's like,
it's a good point.
Is this person fucking up, or are they like the best ever now? It's like, no, you're always a little bit of both at all times. And I just think that the media wants to tell a narrative that's like way overly simplistic, right? Like the person who was the demon hell ride drug addict, like tornado of doom.
Yeah.
Is also the amazingly successful like gift to humanity, but they're just in a different moment in their life. And I think that they're all one and the same at the end of the day. It's just a matter of like us and different individuals learning how to like channel all the energy that we have into something that's healthy and like productive and useful and like reasonable within reason. Like,
you have a great point. Sometimes when I think about how I was acting before I got sober and how I was like, I've started over time create this a narrative that I was terrible, so selfish, and I was more selfish than I am now and more terrible than I am now. But I also loved my friends and loved my family and was, you have a great point, but you're never just terrible.
Dude, I mean, I've known you for a long time, and at no point, sure, there's been moments where I was probably like, fuck Tyler, just like you were like, fuck me, but it was like because we wanted to get omelets from different restaurants or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, that's like all it came down to, but I've always enjoyed your company, and, you know, a lot of the times I didn't even know if you were sober or not. Like, but I still enjoyed your company, and I still enjoyed your energy and your presence.
Sure.
And what's that?
I should say.
Oh, yeah, and it's like, you know, I don't think that those things inherently change. If you're actually good friends with somebody, like, you're gonna like being around them, relatively speaking, all the time, right?
Sure.
Of course, things get to a point eventually where it's like, oh, I can't deal with this, and it gets unmanageable and stuff. But I don't know, man. I think I don't know. We just known each other for a long time. It's cool that we're still friends, and like, it's cool to get to experience like the highs and lows together of a friendship. And like the other night we went to the Clippers game and got to all sit courtside with like the boys. And that was great. That was amazing. And like, that was a fun thing to get to share with someone like you, who's like known me for a long time and known me as minimum wage Jeremy. And like, now we can do something like that. It's fun.
Minimum wage Jeremy.
Yeah.
You know, I feel the same way. Because I'm very proud of this gallery and the studio within this gallery and then this podcast that Jerry and I are doing together, and so it's cool. I feel the same way. This is my Clippers game.
I love this space, by the way. It's amazing.
Thanks, buddy.
This whole gallery is like, it's impressive. I'm like, wow, this is big.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So will you explain to me what it is? Like, for the longest time, my brother worked for JP Morgan, and I've never, still today, do not understand what he did for a living. Tell me how you got into crypto, what your niche is, and just try to break it down as clearly as possible.
Well, it's convoluted and it's hard to explain, but I guess I can just say that I'm a founder of multiple different crypto projects, and I have a big social presence in crypto, to the point that now I'm banned from Twitter and X, because I believe that I'm so disruptive to that industry that they can't even handle me being on social media anymore. So, but yeah, like, the short and simple version of it is that I've founded and built multiple different crypto projects, and I've also been instrumental in the success of a lot of other tokens. Some of them are like, you know, some of the top tokens in the whole world of cryptocurrency. And
like what? Dogecoin, or like which ones?
So Pepe, which is the number 3 meme coin in the world. There's Dogecoin and there's Shiba Inu, which are the number 1 and number 2 respectively. And Pepe is number 3.
Got it.
And Pepe came out like, I don't know, maybe like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that. And when it came out, I was one of the first people to find it on social media, like right the day that it was released. And I looked at it and I just was like, I think this is going to 1000x. And it did a 4000x in 3 weeks. And I was instrumental in making that happen. I introduced the people who made the token to the biggest crypto exchange in the world, which is called Binance.
Okay.
And basically, it went from 0 to $1.6 billion market cap at the time in 19 days, which is totally unheard of and record setting. And as a result, a lot of people all over the world made absolutely life-changing money, right?
Right.
And a lot of people became millionaires, and a lot of people made hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a lot of people made tens of thousands of dollars. And that like propelled my platform to the highest levels of crypto.
Okay.
And, just a lot of interesting stuff has happened since then. And it's all like, the thing about crypto is that it's a niche environment. It's not something that is like really mainstream, and it's still relatively small. I know that people talk about it a lot because there's a lot of money attached to it.
Yeah.
But to be like the most popular person in crypto, it doesn't mean shit in terms of like global popularity, right? But there's a lot of money that goes around that industry. So the people who do care a lot. And yeah, I've done a lot of different things in crypto. I also have a crypto exchange, which I built basically with one other friend of mine. And, we do a really small team, but we've done over $1 billion in trade volume. We've distributed over $35 million worth of rewards in cryptocurrency to the people who use our software. We've done over 1 million trades, and we're, just over a year old. So, with digital technology, people are able to achieve a lot of things these days that used to be sort of reserved for like big companies or institutions. And like a good analogy that I would make is like, if you were a musician back in the day and you wanted to make like the most epic record ever, you had to go to the Capitol Records recording studio, and you had to go to like this skyscraper. And if you wanted to record, you needed an orchestra, and you needed all this stuff. You needed like a large amount of physical infrastructure, right?
Sure.
Now you can do it all on a laptop. You can make a whole orchestra just on a shitty little laptop.
Yeah.
Right. And like basically all of the tools have become a lot more accessible to people. And what that has done is that has made these big corporate behemoths quite obsolete in a lot of ways. And so, there's big crypto companies that have, 1,000-person office and a skyscraper and a big marketing budget and a big attorney and, legal counsel team. And they ain't shit. And they can't fuck with me, like, because we're grassroots. But basically, like, in 2024, you can build a go-kart in your garage with a couple really fucking genius motherfuckers, and you can pull up to the Grand Prix, and you can beat Ferrari and McLaren and fucking all the billion-dollar race teams. And that's what is happening right now.
In crypto.
In crypto, yeah. Specifically with myself and my projects. Like, there's one of the biggest crypto companies in the United States is called Coinbase, and they can't compete with me. And I've outbuilt them on multiple fronts. Wow. And, they have the seats behind me at the Clippers game now. I'm in the front row, and they were in the second row directly behind me. They moved as soon as they found that out. Now they're in the third row somewhere else. And, there's opportunities that the mainstream media doesn't want people to know exist. The mainstream media is owned by these dinosaur corporations and these dinosaur boomer businessmen, and they don't want young people to know that they can literally take over an entire industry now. And they can. And the world changes so fast now because of technology that people are not really ready for it. And it creates a lot of cognitive dissonance when you're confronted with the truth and reality about that. And actually, one of our friends, Eric Ray Davidson, who is the GQ photographer who used to do photographs of Army sometimes, and his wife was Army's stylist, his ex-wife. Anyways, Eric has said some really interesting things about that subject, how like the world is changing so fast now that it's actually too much for us to handle psychologically at a certain point. But if you're able to accept it and kind of roll with the chaos or kind of surf those waves, there's an insane amount of opportunity in front of all of us right now. It's just scary because like I truly think that we're exposed to such an insane amount of information through our tech devices, our smartphones, and the internet and the algorithm. It's putting so much information in front of us all the time that it's overwhelming. And at a certain point, we just shut off. We're like, I can't take it anymore. I'm just going to go into shutdown mode. And if you can withstand that, and you can just be like, look, man, the world is changing faster than ever, and I'm going to roll with it, you can become like a force to be reckoned with really fast, right?
Totally.
So
even in, let's say, doing this podcast, it costs money. There like Jerry has a world of experience making movies and making television shows and editing and shooting. And he brings all that to what we're doing right now. And without that, we couldn't do this. Maybe in a minute, like your computer can all of a sudden just do everything, or maybe it's, I mean, you're right. It's so important to sort of surf because you want to stay ahead of the wave. You want to surf what is happening and not get scared of it.
Yeah. I like the saying, like, 5 years worth of life happens in 5 days in 2024. Like 20 years ago, 5 years has been distilled into 5 days now.
Sure.
Like, dude, the former president got shot in the face like 2 months ago. No one even knows what the name of the shooter is.
That is so crazy.
Do you know what the name of the shooter is?
No, I have no idea.
Me neither. Dude, that guy shot the fucking president in the face. And we're like, oh, like, look at this other thing.
We still know about Hinckley, and we know about John Wilkes Booth.
We know who Hawk Tua is.
We know who Hawk Tua is.
But we don't know the name of the guy who just shot the president in the face like less than 100 days ago.
Well, in all fairness, they're with shooters in general, the press is recently making an effort to not release them, so everyone doesn't want shooter fame. So it's like on school shootings, you don't. So that makes, but overall, no one is still talking about that shooting at all.
Here's the thing, like, and this is part of what I do with crypto, is that I believe that there's an easy way to make sure that everyone knows the name of that shooter.
Okay.
And it's you turn him into a meme. Because, and that's one of the things that I've done with my crypto business is I've actually marketed myself by turning myself into a meme. And that was sort of like one of my thesis, right? We have the guys pulled up on the screen here now. But like literally
ding dong. What a ding dong.
It's crazy. Like I remember his face now. But look, I think that memes are like a very futuristic form of communication. And I think that I would look at it like they're like nanotechnology in terms of communication.
Okay.
I think that before, ideas would get transmitted in like big ways. You would get an encyclopedia, or you would get like the Goodyear blimp, or you'd get like a Super Bowl ad. But now it's all been like fractured into like a million tiny little pieces. And I think that if you can control those million tiny little pieces, you can put ideas into people's head in a way that didn't work before. Before, without social media, a meme didn't matter. But if you make a really good meme now, it can go viral and it can become this like permanent fixture in people's brains, right? It's like, I think of them as like mini brain viruses. And I think that like, look, Hawk Tua is literally a viral meme. And she's more famous than the person who shot the president in the face. If we made the guy who shot the president into the face into a Hawk Tua style meme, everyone will know his name.
Hawk Tua has a podcast that I think is killing it.
I don't know anything about it. Like, it's just, to me, my biggest takeaway from the Hawk Tua thing is like, wow, the world is very different right now than it was ever before. Like, in no way, shape, or form could someone like that become a global icon
instantly.
Yeah. And maybe people are probably like, oh, maybe she's like an industry plant or something like that. That could also be part of it too.
Sure.
But there's something about virality now, right? Like Kim Kardashian's one of the most famous people in the world and a billionaire because she made a sex tape.
Yeah.
That's not how you became famous 20 years ago. You had to be in Top Gun, or you had to be in, Heat or whatever. You had to be like in a Robert De Niro movie. Like now you just like give someone a blowjob or like make a joke about giving a blowjob on camera and then you're famous. Like it's just, things have changed.
What is interesting, I mean, they did have these people back then, and then they would be on Hollywood Square. It's like if someone had a little bit of a shtick, then they would be on Hollywood Squares forever, repeating that shtick. And there were those things, but it wasn't any way near what it is now.
Yeah, I just think that like
Phyllis Diller. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, I do. Wasn't she an actress though? She was like a novelty actress.
There were just there were like these novelty people, and it's like, were those the memes back then? Like
they're like early prototypical memes.
Prototypical memes.
But I just think that the way that social capital moves is a little bit different now than it was before. And like that's part of why I bought those front row seats for the Clippers games for the next 4 years, was because I just intuitively knew that it was this like abstract form of social capital. And I think that we live in attention economies, right? And, it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil or whatever. If you get people's attention, then you can have a platform, right?
Sure.
But if you don't captivate people's attention, no one gives a shit about what you have to say.
They did that stadium right.
It's good. It's good.
So Ballmer is the only one that owns it, right?
That's my understanding. Yeah, Steve Ballmer, the former CEO of Microsoft, owns the team.
Total
outright
stud.
And built the stadium outright.
Total stud.
Yeah, I met him briefly in the bathroom of all places. And I know the bathroom is like the...
Is he great?
Steve Ballmer?
Yeah.
We just had a brief interaction, and I was just like happy to meet the owner of the team, you know?
Sure.
And it's interesting because I have the 4-season tickets in the front row, and there's only 2 other individuals who have 4-season tickets at that arena in the front row, and that's Steve Ballmer, who's like top 10 richest people in the world, former CEO of Microsoft, keeps flip-flopping back and forth with Bill Gates for one of the richest people in the world.
Yeah.
And then there's another guy named Keith Wasserman, who I don't know that much about, but he's apparently a real estate billionaire. So me and these 2 billionaires have 4 front row season tickets. And then besides us, there is Walt Disney, William Morris Endeavor, the biggest talent agency in the world, and Universal Music. So those are the names that I'm like alongside now. And to me, that's powerful.
Spectacular.
Yeah, it's powerful social capital, right? Because perception is everything.
It's such a fun deal. We drove up. I'm gonna try to create we drove up, and you drive right up to the front.
Yeah,
the same spot where the players park and get out, and then walk directly there. There's nothing else in the way.
Well, they give us a little extra special love because you're with me. They move the cones and we go like right in.
Oh yeah, trust me, I'm aware it wasn't for me.
It was for us. It's for us.
Okay, that's so generous for us. And then we go to the VIP of VIP lounges, which there are several, and this is the very, very IP, where the players walk through it to get to the game, from their locker room to the game. And so and there's literally a moment where you can put your hand out and they'll high five you.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the food was amazing. And it was the coolest. It was one of my favorite experiences. It's one of my favorite sports. It's ruined me forever, probably. I was telling my son about it. I'm like, dude. And I was playing him videos. I'm like, this is how he's just old enough where he's like, that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, you showed him.
Yeah.
You showed him.
He's like, Dad, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So awesome. Is there anything that you see? Are there any trends coming up in crypto that we should be looking for?
I've always thought that in crypto you can become like a boomer, so to speak, and overnight. And I feel like I'm kind of at that stage in my trajectory with crypto. Like, I think that I'm still one of the most like relevant people in the industry, and I think that the stuff that I build is like basically years ahead of anyone else. But I don't know. I think that crypto's been around for like over 10 years now.
Sure.
And I just think that there's not as much opportunity remaining in crypto as people like to think that there is, right? The people who like bought Bitcoin early when it was like, $1, $5, $10, you're not going to see that ever happen again. Like
my brother gave me a Bitcoin at $700.
Yeah. And you still have it?
I've sold it.
Well, that's okay.
Yes.
A lot of people did that. And in terms of trends with crypto, like you're asking the wrong person, honestly. And I think that's an important thing that I've learned is that like, just because I've had a lot of success in crypto, I have to remember that like, I'm not good at anything to do with money. I'm not good at finance. I'm not good at trading. I'm not a financial advisor. I've done really, really well for myself in crypto, but that's because I'm good at making memes. I'm good at talking to people. I'm good at getting attention. I'm stubborn. I have like some abstract qualities that serve me well in that environment, but they have very little to do with money, finance, trading, or, investment advice. Like that's just not something I know much about.
Or even watching the market go up and down and predicting that's not what you're doing at all. Yeah.
No, I mean,
my brother sent a text that said, "Hey, can you ask Jeremy what to do? Like, should I be investing in this or this?" And you looked at the text and you go, "Wait, no."
Yeah, well, no.
You want me? Wait, and then you had the funniest response.
Yeah. I said, tell him to stop gambling.
But you also go, you want me to tell him how to make money?
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know. I just I don't know what to tell you about that. Crypto is interesting.
All right, tell me. Okay, I'd like to discuss some people that are like part of their personalities is kind of showing off their wealth and how they've made it. Maybe even using it as a way to encourage other people. Okay, but I think we maybe follow or are aware of some of the same people. So you brought up one. Why am I blanking on his name? Bald hair, Andrew
Tate, the guy with the glasses.
What are your thoughts of Andrew Tate?
I really don't know that much about him. I think that he's an interesting speaker. And what we were talking about was that I just think it's very bizarre that he wears sunglasses all the time.
Oh, okay.
I think that that's a red flag and a serious indication of weakness. But I've actually interacted with Andrew Tate a little bit on social media. Like I said, my main platform, which is I go by the nickname on the internet Pauly0x.
Okay.
Which is like sort of my like famous alter ego or whatever in crypto.
Yeah.
I'm definitely crypto famous. But anyways, Andrew Tate interacted with me a little bit briefly. And basically, there was a period of time where like any celebrity who wanted to make a cryptocurrency or a meme coin had to like acknowledge me, interact with me, because I'm really like the king of that shit.
Wow.
And because of all the stuff that happened with that Pepe thing, I started this sort of meta or this wave of meme coins. And, you know, people trade billions of dollars of meme coins every day. And if it wasn't for me, that wouldn't be happening. It's like full stop. And so, you know, anyone who was around for sort of like the early days of this stuff knows that, and they know without any question.
Sure.
But people they'll try to argue that that's not true because they want to try to like give themselves credit for it. But yeah, I mean, look, for example, my crypto project gave $2 million worth of cryptocurrency to Matt Fury, who's the original creator of the Pepe the Frog cartoon, which is the most famous meme on the internet.
Okay.
And we did that just because we thought it was amazing how cool Matt was about just letting people use his frog cartoon. Like, he could have like made a whole stink about it and like sued a bunch of people, but he didn't. And he was super cool. And I happen to have a lawyer who's representing me in this trademark infringement case that I'm involved with, who also represented Matt Fury when there was a whole thing where like, I think InfoWars and Alex Jones was like using his frog cartoon for all kinds of crazy like alt-right shit or something like that. And anyways, Matt like took some legal action about it. But in the context of the crypto stuff, I was like, he's just being really cool and letting all these weird internet crypto nerds like make this token and like make millions of dollars off of it. So I was like, how come no one's doing anything for this guy? The people who made the Pepe token, they didn't do shit for him. And I'm like, you guys made tens of millions of dollars off this guy's frog cartoon, and you're not even going to give him like a sandwich? Like, fuck you guys. Fuck you. So we're going to step up and we're going to do it. And I'm really happy that we did. We gave him $2 million worth of crypto. I think he cashed out like a total of maybe like $1.7 million worth into US dollars. And that's amazing. And he deserves that. And like, that's another principle that I've learned through painful lessons is like, never resist a generous impulse, right? And greed is like something that will stifle your growth. Selfishness is something that will stifle your growth. So any opportunity you have to do the opposite of be greedy and selfish is a blessing, and it will bless you. So that's I think like believing in God and being humble and understanding the value and the power of generosity is something that I believe has propelled me to like great success in a short period of time.
That's listen, we're done. That's great. That's a great way to end. Peace.